To order for February 14, 2019. Mr. Skarsky, please call the roll.
Mr. Violi?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
I'm here, CJ.
Spatz?
Present.
Mr. Gibson?
Here.
Mr. Grimm?
Here. Please stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no one signed up for public comments, so we'll move on to approval of the minutes. As soon as I get to it. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the minutes from 1/10/19 organizational meeting, the 1/10/19 regular board meeting, and the 1/23/19 special board meeting as submitted.
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any comments? CJ, please call the roll.
Mrs. Battle?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes. That motion carries. Moving on to report, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to skip item number 1 and move to item number 2. As all of you know, one of the savings that we did this year immediately to save money was we cut all field trips that were not funded by grants or other monies. So unfortunately, earlier in the year, I had to cancel the None for Under 21 trip for our high school seniors. It's a pretty powerful experience for them. They, along with all the other seniors in Portage County, go to Hiram College, and I believe it's in April, and it's a program designed to help young teenagers as they head into prom season to see the ramifications of drinking or using and getting behind the wheel. So it's a pretty powerful program. Our own police chief, Darren Powers, is a part of organizing that. And unfortunately, I had to cancel our attendance. Well, Karen Kravitz actually emailed me and said there might be some grant monies available, and she put me in contact with Officer Vicki Yandriga of the Aurora Police Department, and she directed me on how to write a grant. It was very minimal, one-page, basically asking for funds. And what I did is I calculated with the help of CJ and Andreas, the transportation costs, driver's wages, fuel, and wear and tear on our buses to take 3 buses for the high school seniors. I submitted that, and we did just receive today the check. So from the Portage County Law Enforcement Trust Fund, and again, Officer Vicki Yandriga of the Aurora PD Department facilitated that. We're going to be able to cover the cost of that trip so that our high school seniors can attend the other seniors from around the county. So I did want to publicly thank the Portage County Law Enforcement Trust Fund and Officer Vicki Yandriga of the Aurora PD for helping us do that. And so now our students will get to attend that event. And that will be at no cost to the district.
Thanks to Karen, too.
Karen for pulling in.
Great job, Karen.
Questions? All right, next item on the list. So I want to begin by giving a shout out to our board president, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Grimm is behind facilitating this. Now, behind facilitating what? You may have read in August, I think it was August or September, Kevin, that University Hospitals donated Stop the Bleed buckets to Crestwood. And these Stop the Bleed buckets are a bucket that contains a Stop the Bleed kit, which I have here and I'll pass down, which contains a tourniquet, a compact rated tourniquet, combat gauze, bleeding control gauze, along with scissors and some other items. It's sealed in this. And along with this bucket, we'll have that. One of those, we'll have toilet paper. It's just in case a group of students or individuals get locked into a classroom during a crisis for a long period of time. We'll have toilet paper in the bucket, a sheet for privacy, a trash bag, and it'll also contain other first aid items for treating minor injuries. And this is all free. So Kevin Mr. Grimm contacted University Hospital's Dan Ellenberger. He's the director of EMS Training and Disaster Preparedness Institute, who's facilitating this for schools. And we met with him this week. And Mr. Grimm actually went to a business in town, Kevin, which Berry Plastics, and is having 350 buckets donated to us. And then the University Hospitals then will donate then the contents that I just described for those buckets. And the only obligation by the Streetsboro City School District will be to have every one of our employees receive about an hour to an hour and a half training, and that is also free. So they'll deliver the buckets, we'll arrange the training. The teachers and staff members will each get their own bucket. They'll be trained on how to open it, what the items are in the bucket, and kind of make it their own. And once that training is complete, those buckets will go back to our classrooms and our other areas around the buildings. So in essence, what this is doing is this is putting a life-saving bleeding control kit and other first aid items in every single classroom in the district. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I just recently wrote a grant with the Bureau of Workers' Compensation to have a bolus stick installed on every door. And in addition to that, I also had an emergency trauma kit that mounts to the wall next to the AEDs, 2 per building, that have 8 stop the bleed kits in each one. So it's a total of 16 stop the bleed kits, and they're mounted next to the AEDs. So with that, those 2 items in each building mounted on the wall, and one of these in every classroom, office area is an office. If we ever had an unfortunate incident where we had to manage first aid, or even, God forbid, apply tourniquets or combat gauze, we are going to have these items housed in virtually every corner of every one of our buildings. And for me, I know that there's some controversy behind that. People will say, we don't want to see bleeding control kits on the walls. We don't. For me, I would rather say, the reality of life is could it happen? Very slim possibility very slim possibility that something could happen. But if it did, I want to be prepared for it. So we're going to train our teachers on how to use these kits. Some of our administrators have been trained on administering tourniquets and some combat first aid training. And I would ultimately like to see our students then, depending on the level, obviously, I think a high school student could very easily apply a tourniquet and learn how to shove gauze into a wound. I think our elementary kids could learn how to apply a compress to someone that's bleeding and identify someone that's in distress. I'd eventually like to roll this training out, but we got to take baby steps. So thank you to Kevin. Thank you to University Hospitals and Dan Ellenberger. I would anticipate, Arian and I and Matt, we're trying to talk about ways that we can get that training in each one of the buildings. We're going to try and do it within the school day and use volunteers. Maybe some of the administrators go into the classrooms, maybe pull groups of kids out to show movies while teachers get this training. So that, again, there's no cost to the district. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Is there shelf life on that product?
If you look at that kit, those trauma kits do have a shelf life. I don't remember, Andres, do you remember what the shelf life is on the tourniquets?
It's probably 5 to 7 years, depending on or longer, because it's all vacuum sealed. It's all.
Yeah, because the gauze actually has coagulant in it that will stop bleeding. So that has a shelf life, as well as, I think the tourniquet actually has, well, maybe not the tourniquet, but definitely the gauze has a shelf life to it. So, and I'm sure that'll be part of our training. So we may have to eventually, after a few years, resupply some of the buckets. And then one thing Mr. Ellenberger was saying is that in some of the districts, teachers have really taken ownership of that. They've involved students, and they've put other items into their bucket that might be relevant. Like if they're in a classroom, the door is locked and barricaded, and they've got to stay in there for a long period of time. So teachers have said, hey, I think we need to add this, this, and this to our bucket too, and kind of take ownership of it. So that's why they insist on the training with the teachers, to make it their own and say, this is going to be yours. You've got to take care of it. You've got to make sure it doesn't leave your classroom. This can save your life. This could aid you in a tough situation. And so that they invite teachers to add, staff members to add what they need to add to it. Kevin, was there anything else?
No, the buckets are relatively easy to open. They're not, a young child couldn't necessarily open it, but they are sealed. Berry Plastics gave us 2 buckets to consider. We used a smaller one based on what they were going to put in it, and it's actually easier to get off. But Berry Plastics is working on getting those buckets to us. As soon as they come in, we'll coordinate with university hospitals to get them to a central location and get them filled and sealed. And then also, because those kids can be used for anything that happens. A tornado goes through a school or anything happens. So it's just not for an active shooter type situation. But also university hospitals is bolstering the safety within the city. They're going to donate stop the bleed kits sealed packets to the police department, so they have one in every police car. And they already donated trauma kits to the police department a couple of years back. So University Hospital has been a great partner with us. It just took time to stay on Danny because Danny's very busy. So it took several months until we were able to finally get time with him and come in and talk about it. So thank you for the grant writing and writing successful grants. Really helped out.
Well, I'm excited to get these safety items in the school, and the kits that will hang next to them, the AEDs in the building, those aren't just stop the bleed kits. If we were to have an accident where maybe, I don't know, several kids were cut, right there is a bleeding control kit. It's not just about tourniquets and gauze to stop massive bleeding. There's also supplies in those kits that can stop, superficial cuts, like glass breaking. If we had an event where a glass broke and several people were cut, those kits that mount to the walls can help address that as well. So,
and there's a couple of things that University Hospitals is also insisting on putting in the buckets that deal with safety, so that police and firefighters, EMS on the outside know what the condition is inside the room without necessarily everybody knowing it. But there are some various tapes that they will put in to indicate to us what's going on in each classroom. So every classroom will also have that included.
any questions about that?
That's great.
So when we get those kits, we'll bring one of them to the board meeting so you guys can take it apart and take a look at it. And then just one other item with that. Part of our administrative team, and again, the goal will be to add more and more administrators to this. We have some members of our administrative team now carrying on their person small trauma kits as well. So again, my goal would be to roll that out with every administrator at some point, so that they're carrying some sort of safety items on them at all times, rather than have to run somewhere to get something. Okay, that's that item. Next item. So we had a coffee talk last Saturday, and it was over high school facilities. And I've added a document down under administrative. If you guys want to all open that, I'll talk as you open that. All of you know that one of the hot button issues over the last couple of years has been the use of our facilities, and the most I would say energy has been around the availability of the track. Okay? And then secondarily, I would say that there's been a small group of folks that have really wanted to use the high school field, the turf field. And as you know, we've allowed all of our youth sports, all of our soccer and football teams to use the turf field for one game, and if they make it to the playoffs or championship, to host a championship game. So 2 games a year. And then they play on our old stadium, the middle school stadium, which really is better than most of our PTC school stadiums that are grass. This board spent almost $1 million on that stadium about a year and a half before we passed the bond issue to build a new stadium in the rest of the schools. So we met and we wanted to address those issues. And Randy facilitated, the 2 of us led the charge. And we were there to explain why we've done what we've done. And very basically, we really tried to keep a tight leash on our facilities. They were brand new. And our goal was, we really want these facilities to look like they are now 10 years from now. And we also really wanted that high school field and that high school gymnasium to be something that kids really looked forward to going to play there as a high school student. Because our other facilities are also very good. I mean, the high school or the middle school gymnasium was our high school gymnasium for the last several years. It was upgraded in 2010 after the fire to be a true height-wise middle school or high school gymnasium. And it's in great shape along with that grass field over there. But again, the message was being sent to Randy and myself and maybe some of you, we want more access. So Randy and I met and then with this group, and then we came up with a proposal that all of you have in front of us. And I'd like to go through this proposal item by item and get your feedback. This is not something that I'm asking you to approve tonight. I'm also going to ask you to think about this after this meeting and do some of your own research, ask some of your own questions, and provide feedback to me before the next board meeting. So beginning with the high school track, because that seemed to be the number one, I don't want to say concern, just the number one desire for people to be able to go up there and use that track. And right now, the way we have it set is that whenever a custodian is available, we have that open. During the summertime, as you all know, we utilize team cleaning, and our custodians work from 6 a.m. to 3. So that track was being closed at 3 o'clock. Well, very valid points where I get out of work at 5, 6 o'clock at night, I want to come walk on the track and it's closed. Very good point. On weekends, we would have to pay a custodian overtime to come up and unlock and lock the track. Overtime for custodian is right around $50 an hour. So you have to pay them at least 2 hours if they come up and open that up. So you're looking at 100 during the summertime. You're looking, if you want to keep that track open 24 or 7 days a week with limited hours, we would have to pay a custodian $100 a day to do that. So you can do the math. On the weekends, the same thing. You've got an overtime rate, then custodians to come up and open and close that on the weekends. Some very valid points were made, and after some soul searching and some discussion, listening to some of the residents, one gentleman was very forthcoming. He said he brought his granddaughter up to work on track with her, and it was the track was locked, the gate was locked, so and she was really wanting to become a better runner, so they climbed the fence. And they used the track, and then they climbed the fence and left. And I was looking at the guy saying, I'm just glad you didn't hurt yourself. But, and he and I joked about that afterwards, so that's appropriate that I just said that. But his point was valid. He said to me, he's like, Mike, and he said this publicly, he said this to me privately, if somebody wants to do damage to the high school stadium, they're going to climb over a 4-foot fence. It's not going to matter whether or not a gate's open or not. And if someone wants to go on the football field when there's nobody watching, they're going to climb the 4-foot fence or go around the outside where the baseball fields are, through the weeds and grass where the cell phone tower is, and walk onto the field. And so I think, and after I said, Randy and I were talking, Mr. Devers was there, and he made a very good point about, we really had, this is the single biggest investment this building project the city has ever made. And at least since he's been here, and I'm sure since you guys have been here. And we needed to slow down and really think about how we wanted to use these facilities. We didn't just want to open the gate from the day they opened and give free access to everyone. We needed to kind of see what was going to happen, see what the needs would be, see what people wanted, take a look at what other districts are doing, but then we need to make it fit Streetsboro. So what Randy and I are proposing is that from March 30th through November 30th, and I'm going to always put weather permitting, that we leave that side, if you walk to the main entrance, if you go to the right, there's a small gate that's handicap accessible. We're proposing that we leave that open 24/7. And the reason we're proposing to leave it 24/7 is, very frankly, if it was closed and you wanted to get onto the track for whatever reason, you're going to climb a 4-foot fence. So we do have some conditions, though. We felt that, and we still feel very strongly about this. If there are students or classes on that track during the day, because some of our PE classes go out there, access is denied, and we're going to post that. And if a teacher goes out there and sees somebody walking or taking their class out, the teacher is going to need to be empowered to say, hey, my classes are, you're going to have to go. When our athletic teams, the last thing I want to have happen is a football player catching a pass, running out of bounds and run over someone on the track, or one of our soccer players launch a ball and it hits somebody in the face and knocks them down. We can't have people there when our athletes are there and our students there. It's also, in my opinion, it's a safety risk. Because when you open a track up, you're not opening it up to just school people. You're opening it up to anyone that drives by that high school. It could be anyone in our community. It could be someone from another community. It could be someone from another state. So there is a safety point to that. And we're not doing background checks on them. We have no idea who they are. I'm assuming the worst with that statement, but I'm also going to hope for the best. So we believe that with those conditions that I just stated, you can see on the paper, or on this document, the track will be not available during high school practices, games, or where students or classes are present. Track will be available for our youth cross-country teams to work out and practice on. So when they're there, community is not permitted there. And we will not be opening the bathrooms, because that, again, creates another issue. Bathrooms will not be open except for when there's scheduled events. So whether it's a community event or a school sanctioned event, then of course the bathrooms would be open. We would have a custodian on duty, and they would take care of monitoring those and clean. So and then down on the bottom, if you go clear to the bottom, we have some conditions of use, but the biggest thing is weather permitting, and that's why we're closing the track in most of the districts around us to have all-weather tracks, not cinder, but all-weather tracks. they closed from that November 30th, or they closed right around November 30th and open back up March 30th. Because you can't go out and shovel or plow our track or you'll damage it. So, and then we of course don't want people walking on snow and ice either. So thoughts about the track, just leaving it open 24/7. We do have video surveillance out there. I verified that. I logged onto it on my computer and we have a very comprehensive view of the entire stadium. So if there was something that happened, I hope they're smiling because we're gonna have them on camera.
What type of lighting is out there at night? Every time I've been out there.
Minimal light on the track, none. I believe there's a security light on the visitors concession stand. There's a light over by the cell tower. It's minimal though. And then there's lighting behind the bleachers, between the bleachers and the field house, which is minimal security lighting. So the track will be dark after dark.
What's the liability if somebody goes out onto the track and stumbles and falls and hurts themselves?
My understanding is that our liability insurance would cover that. If it was negligence, it would be on their own. And just one other quick thing, that's a great question, Denise. I did send out a Google Doc to all the area superintendents, and they were all over the place, but most of them, most of the districts around us had 24/7 access to their tracks. Ravenna closes their track at like 10 o'clock at night, but it's open all weekend long too. But they probably have a different negotiated agreement with their classified staff that maybe it doesn't cost them what it would cost us.
It's different.
Yeah.
I checked.
But most, I mean, Aurora, Hudson, they all basically have full access to their tracks.
Do you think it would be at all helpful to post a sign just to make people aware that there is video surveillance 24/7? Just people might want to just know personally that they're on camera.
When we get a final approval from all of you and we make this a policy active, we're going to include signage in that. Signage of rules about the field. If we open, when you open up the track, obviously we're going to have signs that say field use is off limits unless prior approval. But we all know if you have an open fence, we're going to probably have to be tracing people off the field. And we're going to have to do that. The police department will know that too. They've been already good about doing drive-bys and keeping people off the field if they're on it. But some of the things that can void our warranty is if somebody went onto the turf field with spikes on and it ripped the turf, that voids our warranty. So there are things that are our risk. So we're going to put signage that makes it very clear what the conditions of use are, what they can and they can't do. And if they violate that, then they assume responsibility.
So if you go onto the turf field with spikes on and you're on video doing that, you hold the liability, not the school district.
I think we make a pretty good case that we can prosecute.
So I know that you're saying that we're keeping this open so we can use the track, right?
Correct.
Okay, but you can access the field from that track, right?
Right, because we do not have a fence between the track and the field.
Okay. How much did that turf field cost?
The entire turf and the track itself were close to probably $1 million.
Okay. I mean, what happens if somebody decides to do something other than just be on the track and they decide to maybe take a couple kids out there and hit some balls around or do something and they
Damage the scoreboard or some timers,
or the game clock, something like that.
press box windows. There's gonna be an element of risk, and we will have to assume that if we open it up. And one of the things that you're gonna see on down the list that currently our baseball and softball teams use the turf, but they are not allowed to hit on it. Coaches can hit fly balls, but the kids are not allowed to hit. And we do that for a reason. A coach can control it when they're hitting the ball for fielding purposes. You get a kid up the back, they don't always control where they hit or a foul ball. So we are going to assume some liability, but that's going to be part of our rules.
Right, I know that we know that, and our youth coaches might know that, but what if somebody from a different city comes in there? They don't know that.
If we have the signage that says nobody is permitted on the turf field, no baseballs played on without prior permission, that signage then protects us if there's an incident, we have video footage. lot of ifs there, because
Right.
if that video footage is, if there's someone that we know, then we have cameras all around the high school too, so we can get license plates of anyone that come in and out of that. But there are a lot of ifs involved. But that's a risk that if you open up a facility like that you assume.
Were there any schools that did not open up their facility?
When we're talking just the track, no. There wasn't anyone that didn't allow access to the track.
I think at some point.
Some had hours, some did not.
You kind of have to, the community made an investment. They know they made an investment. This is public money. And if somebody from the public purposely destroys the property, you're just, taking it out of your own pocket. I mean, I think that the community needs to take some, I think they will. I find it difficult to believe that somebody would want to go into a nice facility and destroy it.
I don't find it difficult at all nowadays.
But yeah, but you have to start someplace.
How about the middle school? Is that open 24 hours, 7 days?
We didn't address that, but that is open pretty much all the time.
So they can use that track
Yes,
pretty much all the time.
yes.
And have we ever thought about putting in a new track at the middle school too?
I've actually talked about that. I talked about it when Brian was president, and in our meeting, we talked about that idea along with lots of other ideas on using PI dollars that we have. I talked to Randy about it. It might be nice to do a 6-lane track instead of an 8-lane track.
You could put
You could do
a
a small-
asphalt walking track up there too.
We could do a lower end latex track. Ours is a hybrid at the high school.
Yeah.
Your cheaper versions are a latex, so they don't last as long, but it wouldn't be used as much, because even our middle school athletes, if they're hosting a middle school meet, my guess is, I don't know, my guess is they want to go to high school because it's such a nice facility. But if we put a track in at the middle school, you're looking at, because there has to be grading, drainage, you're probably looking in the $200,000 to $300,000 range, maybe more. For a smaller latex lower end track that's maybe the 3/8 inch, no, a 1/4 inch, we went 3/8, so we went the thicker route at the high school to make it last longer. So you can go with a thinner track material. So it starts with an asphalt base, and then they lay the latex down onto it. And we do have a PI levy, and I know that we have some monies left over from the building project that we want to use for board office expansion. We did put that on hold until we can get through this levy to see what's going to happen with levy, even though we all understand PI dollars are not operating dollars. But we do have PI dollars from our PI ongoing, our limited 5-year limited PI that, and we have some PI dollars in the bank. We also have naming rights money that we raised to help support additions, repairs to the current stadium. So, those are all things that we can talk about, but it's currently a cinder track. We see a few athletes here that have ran on it before. It's not very nice. I think there's divots in it. We scrape it we used to scrape it every, I don't know if we still scrape it or not. We do, okay.
I mean, people can walk on it, right? You can run on it. It's not like it's portable, but you can do it.
Yeah.
So can we at least see what it will cost to get the track put in middle school? Just curious to see what it costs.
The only concern I have is the turf field itself and not using it properly. So when I'm reading through this, it's the head coaches that are going to be assigning times for activities there, right? Is that what I'm reading?
They're going to approve the times because we're giving first access to our coaches and our athletes.
Right. So, but if they give access to a youth team to come up there, I would like to see sort of like we do in the schools where you come and you sign in, you get a pass. Whoever that head coach is, that person needs to have something that designates they're responsible for the kids on that field. If one of us were to come up there and see a team that shouldn't be there, I'd like to be able to identify the people that should be there as well.
That's a good idea. And just so you know, part of our ML scheduling program, it outlines, it's basically a contract with all the conditions of use. So we're gonna have to update it to reflect anything else that we add to it, like a field. But I think that's a great idea. And Randy and I actually talked yesterday when we met about, we're going to require every youth sport to have one designated liaison. And that person is going to be the one that schedules and is going to be responsible for the use of that youth activity. Because what we don't want is if there are, I'm making this up, if there are 6 soccer teams that use that, and maybe they're all Streetsboro soccer teams, but they're not necessarily all affiliated together. We don't want 6 different coaches trying to schedule time. We're gonna absolutely insist that there's one liaison for each youth sport.
And I'd almost give it go to the extreme that they're signing some type of a document that states these are the rules, and if I can, just if they're violated, it's 0 tolerance. We're not going to allow.
That's already in place. That's already in place with our scheduling program, and they have to have liability insurance, $1 million of liability insurance. All that's already in place. Damage is at their expense.
Yeah, I've seen even on that field already. I've seen sports teams up there with their, the coaches' kids, and they're out and jumping on the mats and for the for the high jump, and I'm just saying that one of those kids jump off of that mat and break their neck. I mean, we're on the hook to some degree. So I just want to make sure that we're addressing all those concerns and making sure that those people that are signing up to use the facilities are responsible for their teams and their people that they have there.
We may have to issue like an actual permit.
Yeah,
And we can have, we would have our legal team obviously, that this is not new.
I agree.
This is not new. Lots of school districts are doing this. Lots of school boards are asking the same questions you're asking. There's an answer to that. We're in the beginning stages of investigating this, but we already have that built into our scheduling program. When you log on and you agree to terms, you're agreeing to all the things that you just said: assumption of liability insurance, assumption for damage and risk, all of that.
I don't want to come across where I'm not for allowing the use. I believe that we should.
You're just asking good questions.
But I just want to make sure that the people that are there are kind of protecting the investment as well as any of the board members or the administrators in this community.
Randy and I also talked about, again, this was part of our presentation tonight, with all of the items that you see on this list in front of you. What we would propose is to circle back to this after maybe 6 months or 1 full year, or maybe circle back after each season, because each season uses a different facility, and analyze what happened, how it went, and maybe we need to change the rules, maybe we need to modify a contract, maybe we need to up a fee, I don't know, but we're going to also propose that at least for the first couple of years, that on some scheduled basis that we revisit it and we talk as a group, as a board, what worked, what didn't, what do we need to tweak. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is relevant. One of the things that came out of the meeting on Saturday was the desire to have all the youth coaches come together on a periodic basis. And Randy has organized, I think it's on the bottom, no, it's on board docs. It's March, hold on a second, too many things open. March 18th at 6 p.m. at the high school, we're going to hold our first youth coaches forum, and we're going to make them part of this process. When this board decides on the parameters for facility use, these folks are going to have to own it, and they're going to have to police it, and they're going to have to be a part of it. They said loud and clear they want to use the facilities. We're going to let them use, pending board approval, we're going to let them use the facilities with parameters, and then they're going to have to own it. And if they don't, then there are going to be items put into place that if you violate these terms, then you void your use of the facilities. And a lot of districts do that too. One thing that we discovered, Samantha Velbeck, Area Secretary, and Sue Stockard, my secretary, when they started doing some research into different fee structures for the different athletic facilities around the county. And we discovered that we are sometimes 300 and 400 and 500% cheaper than most places. So we need to take a serious look also at the fee structure.
So how much does it cost to reserve the turf field if somebody wants to use it?
I don't have that in front of me right now. And right now, nothing, because we've not allowed it. And the youth teams, the only thing we've charged them are the faculty manager custodians. Faculty managers are the only ones that are allowed to run the scoreboard and, run lights and things like that. So the youth sports that have used it, they pay for that faculty manager, it's an hourly rate, and then custodial time. One thing that we've not done for those youth events is we've not charged them for our custodians going in there afterwards and cleaning up all the trash. I think that needs to change. I think either the folks that use it have to get all the kids and clean up afterwards, or we need to, force custodial time, overtime. Because right now what they pay is an hour before, an hour after, and during the event. It's an hour before, an hour after, and during the event. So I think that's, again, we're going to have to look at a lot of things. The fee structures is another one. And it's not to try and keep people out, but again, we have to protect our investment, and there's going to be damage, and there's going to be wear and tear. And actually, a couple of the gentlemen that were there on Saturday said you need to charge us fees so that as you build your coffers and things happen, you have money to cover those wear and tear items. Those weren't my words; those were somebody's words from this weekend. I don't know who it was, but I think Andy and Brian, you guys were, but somebody did say that. And then someone had a great idea. Let's hold a youth tournament, and we can make a ton of money that can go right back into sports and into sport youth athletics, which directly feeds into our school athletics. Going back to that document, so that was the field. If we look at the high school football field, we tried to cover all the sports. So again, what we came up with, obviously that first line is no spikes to be used on the high school field at any time. For youth football and youth soccer, whether it's a practice or game, we're going to open it up, but it's only going to be on Sundays. We can't open that facility up on Saturdays or Fridays or during the week because it's used by our teams. And in the event that a game is rescheduled, and let's say youth have scheduled 10 games on the field on Saturday, and we had to all of a sudden reschedule that, our varsity sports and junior varsity sports take precedent over that. And so we could potentially have to kick, 10 teams in a planned tournament off the field because our events have to take precedent. So we don't use them on Sundays. So we're proposing that for the high school football field, if we were to open it up, it would be for football and soccer. It would be September and October in season, only open it to each sport for their season. That way they don't infringe upon another sport. So for September and October, Sundays between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., that stadium will be open for scheduled for football, and youth football and youth soccer, whether it's practices or games. The conditions are you have to pay your facility fee, you have to pay for, if it's a game, you have to pay for your game manager, and you also have to pay for custodians. So there's going to be costs associated with this.
So if the football team wants to use, or the soccer team wants to use it from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., they would have to pay somebody to be there the entire time.
You're talking about a youth?
Yes.
Well, we would not probably allow one team to schedule that unless it was a
I mean, if
tournament.
there were multiple games, let's say.
So if it was like a tournament day, then they would have to have a faculty manager, they have to pay for someone to be there the entire time, and custodians the entire time.
And then who would be responsible for cleaning it up?
That's what I said earlier, is that we would build that into the structure. Because we're not going to have our high school custodians or our maintenance guys going out there on Monday morning and picking up trash.
I'm kind of viewing this Sunday thing as opening the fields up for practices, right?
If they want, it can be 4 games.
4 games.
It can be, we're not going to, we gave all youth teams 1 game on during the season, and if they made it to playoffs, 1 game. We're now saying that those games, whether games or practices, Sunday is the day that they can use it.
And how much money did we put into the middle school field again?
The middle school.
$1.5 $750,000, right?
It's closer to $1 million when you look at when we tore the field out. We put new drainage in, a new scoreboard, new bleachers, and new lights.
Okay. And they've been using that field.
They actually last year was the first year they got to use it all the time. Before, they were allowed to have 1 game there, and they used the field that was across from the board office.
Okay.
So again, that's what we proposed. Then, as far as youth baseball,
Okay. Do we charge them for that? Did we charge them for the use of the middle school field?
I wasn't sure if we had a faculty manager there.
No, the youth sport coordinator, Walter Madison, for example, football. In fall, it's here. And soccer coach at high school coordinator soccer. And they use the crosswalks, we painted the field, cut the field, maintained it.
And did charge. And then we cleaned it then afterwards. And I do want to reiterate the fact that that field is nicer than most of the grass fields in this region.
It is, you're right.
Because of the drainage that we put into it, and we seed it and we fertilize it, and we have a watering system there that we maintained when we built the new middle school. We actually had, that was quite a process, if you remember, that we had to actually jump through a lot of hoops to get that watering system back up. And
How would you compare that middle school field to other middle schools in the area?
there is not a comparison. I know,
Probably one of the nicest middle school stadiums in the state.
you know, the Fort Lake local just rebuilt they rebuilt some facilities. Their old high school stadium became their youth football and middle school stadium, and it was a grass field with bleachers, but that's been since torn down because they put a school there, and they just use fields that are very similar to what's across from the board office. So some, for just complete transparency, we do have some of our Portage County schools, though, that do allow youth football and soccer to use their high school field all the time. Garfield does, Wyndham does.
Are those grass fields or?
Those are grass surfaces.
The more you, I have a question about the turf.
Okay.
So I know turf is very durable and it lasts a long time, but if you use it more,
It's dependent on use.
so it can wear more, you would have to replace it earlier, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what does it cost to replace a turf field? Randy might know.
Well, it's not as much as it costs to put in, because the cost of putting it in was the excavation, the drainage,
Right.
and all of that. I'm just gonna throw out an arbitrary number. I would say $2,000 or $3,000 to replace the turf and all the rubber.
You mean $200,000 or $300,000?
$2,000 or $300,000, yeah. And I'm ballparking that.
It's probably about 150,000 for the turf itself, but we don't have to do any of the ancillary
But
stuff.
you also then you're also talking about all of the conditioning, all the pellets, and so we use a combination of sand and rubber pellets for the Gmax rating. We have a maintenance plan where they come in and run a machine through it, pick it up, sanitize it, pull any things out, put everything back in to maintain the Gmax rating. But again, we use it limited. The more you use it and increase it, we would probably need to at least consider and talk to the MOTS group about would we need to clean and condition that field more.
Okay.
Other questions? So then just moving down, staying with the high school football field. You know, one of the gentlemen that was there was talking about not being able to, in April and May, go to the turf field to practice. So what we propose is to allow those practices. Again, it's scheduled so it doesn't interfere with our teams, but there's to be no hitting, period. And we've already talked about why. Moving to
I guess I'm not understanding what's the difference between like practicing on our turf field at the high school and practicing on the grass at the middle school.
So in April and May, the grass at the current middle school, the grass field, we may not want people on it because it'll be wet and it can tear it up. It would depend on the weather, because even though it has a good drainage system in it, it's going to still be wet, the ground will still be soft. So you don't necessarily want people out there running and.
So the turf just allows them to get out there earlier in
Correct,
season
yes.
practice.
Yeah.
I have a question about that. So, how many baseball fields do we have in the city park?
10.
10. And they're all in pretty good shape?
I would say 8 of the 10, 9 of the 10 are in really good shape. They've maintained them. And they've added additional parking. It's a pretty nice facility. The one field that's directly behind SES, we were under the impression that someone's going to take that over and kind of beautify it and make it their own, but that never, I don't think that happened. That happened back there. They're going to redo the dugouts and get a travel team. But that's not happening.
And they can use the the gyms to practice on, right? We allow the baseball teams?
No. We do not allow, we use the annex, our team uses the annex for hitting and throwing. And that would be the old cafeteria, we have a hitting cage in there, and then they can also throw. Because that floor is a tile floor, so you can't damage that floor. We would not allow our baseball team to use the regular gym in the annex because that's a nice wood floor. So we put wrestling in the regular gym, the mats are down full time, and then in the old cafeteria, baseball, softball, use hitting nets and pitching and catching and throwing there.
So I'm not sure, I know it's just for youth kids, obviously they can't hit the ball that far, but even if they do happen to do it by accident or something, I don't know if you know this, but how high is the scoreboard on the field? Brandon might know.
Off the ground?
Yeah.
Probably about
20 feet?
Yeah, and then the end zone clocks are closer to around that. And then your press box is probably 20 feet in the air. The
Well, the
glass
scoreboard was 130,000, I think.
It was a lot, because there's a video portion of it, was a lot.
It's not just that, you have other buildings there, you got the stands there, they're all aluminum, I mean, you hit a ball and it's, I mean, you're gonna.
The skirting will
Popcorn's all
damage
over.
it, the skirting around the.
So I understand not hitting on the turf field, I mean, that's on a stadium, but practicing on it, I think a controlled practice is probably, even colleges do that now, you know. But they don't typically hit on those fields unless they have some kind of portable, you know, tunnel that they put on it, you know.
I mean, I don't know what it would cost to replace or fix the scoreboard, but I don't know how many people have that amount of money in their bank account to
They
get those.
would have to have $1 million liability insurance, so that should cover damage. But, you know, again, we said absolutely no before to even our own teams. Our own teams use the turf field on a very limited basis, and we only allowed our coaches to hit fly balls to the players, and that was our own varsity, junior varsity teams. And we said no to everyone else. But we received a lot of negative feedback. I personally received a ton of phone calls over the last couple of years about that. So moving to the high school gymnasium, again, the youth basketball, what we're proposing for the high school gymnasium, again, on Sundays in December, January, and February, times 8 to 5. And again, one of the points that was brought up to me was that gym sits empty several Saturdays, but we never know when we're gonna have to reschedule a game and have to bump it to a Saturday. So again, we kind of zeroed in on the Sunday as that day where we know our sports are not going to be using it. So for the high school gymnasium, youth basketball, we said Sundays, December, January, February, 8 to 5 p.m. Obviously coordinate those times with our head coaches because sometimes our head coaches decide they want to practice or use that. So that would trump any youth use. And then of course they would have to pay for everything that we talked about. You know, if they have a game, they schedule games, there would be a faculty manager, there would have to be custodians on duty, all of that. And again, there would be a rental fee. Staying with the high school gymnasium, we didn't want to leave out our youth cheerleaders. So our youth cheerleaders, again, Sunday, September and October, that's during the football season. So we tried to keep everything by season. So your cheerleaders would have the availability on September and October between 5 and 7 because we had already designated volleyball, youth volleyball, on Sundays in September, October from 1 to 5. So we were going to give the cheerleaders options from 5 to 7, youth volleyball on Sundays in September, October from 1 to 5. And again, coordinated through that head coach, paying the facility fees if they're going to hold a tournament, faculty manager, custodial services, etc. And then we did put youth wrestling on here, but we're going to, unless we hear otherwise, we've dedicated the annex to wrestling. That gymnasium is a high school sized gymnasium, and the mats are down now and they're permanent. We did roll them up last weekend and we will roll them up again this weekend because there were PTC basketball tournaments. So we still use that for basketball, but we tried to create a place where our wrestlers could call their home. They're using the locker rooms, they have their own lockers now. So we're proposing, and the youth already use it. The youth practice after our high school kids and junior high kids do. But again, if they want to hold a youth tournament or hold youth practices or do more with that, we're proposing that they use the annex and they work that out with the high school coaches. And we did not put hours on that because that's a little more open. So it would be more available based on our athletic teams using it. But for now, we're gonna keep them at the annex. They've got everything they need at the annex.
What's the status of the locker rooms for wrestling at the annex?
We found out that the wrestling mats were always in the old cafeteria. And the locker rooms off that old cafeteria, were shut down years ago. You walk in there, the fixtures are covered over, and they were used for storage. And that's what they were using for their locker rooms. And that's why Randy and I, we met with Mr. Coach Zupancic and Jamie Hogue, and we went down and we decided to flip them to the gym that have working locker rooms with showers, with bathrooms. We painted it, we cleaned the showers up. We have a coach's office. Each kid has their own locker. They put a lock on it, and the mats are staying down.
Okay.
And they have a scoreboard that they can run matches and everything. And that was their choice to choose between the cafeteria or the gymnasium. They chose the gymnasium to be their permanent home. All right, then moving on down, high school baseball and softball fields, we said absolutely no use for the 2019 season. And the reason for that is this. All of you know that we finished seeding them in October and November. There's germination that does take place over the wintertime. We've been out to the fields. They're looking good, but they're probably still not going to be a solid base of grass. And we're going to play our varsity and junior varsity sports this year on those fields. So we're anticipating there to be some wear and tear on those fields from just our teams. So we really feel like one more year with just our teams, we'll fertilize, we'll seed, give it one more year of good growth. They have 10 fields they can use in City Park. And we'll keep it just for us. Next year, after the season, or maybe around this time, we'll reevaluate it, look at the condition of the fields themselves. And if they look good, we'll permit use, but it's to be used with conditions. One of the things that I know from my stepson playing baseball is that depending on the age group, you have to move your pitcher's mound and your bases. Well, obviously you can't move the pitcher mounds that are there because they're embedded, but they would then maybe create their own pitcher mound and then take their own bases in and bring them and hammer them in because they're not going to fit into where we have the receptacles. We're going to say none of that. You'll use the field as it is, or you won't play on it. You're not going to hammer your own bases in. You're not going to create your own. You're not going to create your own pitching mounds because that will damage and do wear and tear in our fields.
Do we still own the Field 7? Is that ours?
And that was the one isn't that the one that's right behind SES?
Right.
That's the one that the city hasn't done a lot with. And it's starting to go to a level of disrepair. And a lot of it's because of the flow of the water off of the baseball site, not as much as the SES anymore because we have a retention pond. But the natural flow goes that way. So that field, they quit doing a lot to it because it was just washing out and it wasn't in great shape. We had a travel team, it was last year, that approached us to say, if we do all the work, can we use it? We're like, yeah, go ahead. And that never happened. And if that travel team came back and they wanted to do a bunch of work to it, I would be fine with that. It's not really a great place. It's not real accessible.
My son played Little League on that field. There's holes out in that outfield that are, if you step in it, you break your
I
leg.
think we did though. We took some of the dirt from the high school or the old high school, the middle school project, and some of that dirt was spread out there. Some of the dirt from the elementary project was spread out there. So I think a lot of that was taken care of. A lot of the divots and holes with the field and the dugouts. The dugouts are in complete disrepair.
You're talking about Field 7, right?
It's the one directly behind Streetsboro Elementary School.
I think it's Field
No,
7.
that's Field 10. Field 7 is by the pavilion. Field 10 is the one we're talking about.
It's the one that's off. It's off to the side.
That's back towards the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It butts up against the neighborhood. That's Field 10. Yeah, Field 7's in good shape.
Yeah, Field 10, one of the issues has been what you just pointed out was it's next to the neighborhood. And a lot of those neighbors didn't like people there and balls coming into their yards. And I think that's another reason. I can't speak for the city, but that could be another reason that they didn't really keep it up. There were a lot of problems with it. I don't know that for sure though. All right, so no use of the baseball fields, and then you can see the conditions of use. So overall, this is what we're proposing. Tentatively, you notice I have the word draft written all over this. I would welcome your feedback, not necessarily right now unless you want to. Randy and I would like to start getting this finalized. I guess one thing I would maybe ask, unless one of you say that you're not willing to commit to this, are you okay with because March 30th is approaching, and we do have one more board meeting, so we do have time, but I would propose to at least put some serious thought into the idea of opening the track up 24/7, so people can start using that. And again, it's going to be that March 30th through November 30th.
I would be okay with it, proper signage up there, that's all I'm asking for.
Agree.
I would say that we add on to that, not just 24/7, but dawn to dusk. So you don't have to worry about people out there at 1 in. I mean, if the gates unlocked, they don't walk out there, but you've got a reason to go out there and say.
You're a good point, because if something happens and our signage very clearly says it closes at dusk, then the liability becomes their liability.
Yeah, I mean, saying 24/7 to go up there and block it, but
Yeah, that's
just,
great idea, dawn to dusk. I mean, they don't walk parks, but parks are
Yeah, you can't
dawn to
go
dusk.
hit the swings at 10 o'clock at night.
Randy, if somebody comes on the field, do you get like an alert or anything, or is it based on movement, or you just have to go on the camera to look at it?
Currently, the cameras are live, and
Mhm.
we'd have to go on there. There is a system set up that we could get notification. Mr. Bell just explained.
I can bring it right up on my laptop. The camera's in every single place in this district. And then we can also go back and search for more than a week.
Okay.
We had an incident last Saturday at the PTC tournament at the middle school gym, and on Tuesday I was able to go in and grab about 4 different camera angles of an altercation and forward that to the appropriate people. Yeah.
I would be okay with it as long as we monitor the camera, opening up the track. Because I know that opening that up for the track is great, and I'm all for that. But my main worry is the field itself and the things that are on the field. That's my main worry right there. So as long as we're monitoring it somehow with a video surveillance on a regular basis, then I'm cool with it. But if we can't, then I don't agree to open it up until we get this fund. It's my recommendation.
Okay, so for the March board meeting, between now and the March board meeting, Randy and I'll start working on some signage for out there that talks about everything we just talked about. And tentatively, we're announcing now, tentatively, that beginning March 30th, that we're going to open the track up dawn to dusk, 7 days a week. It'll be open. And I'll probably just run our policy by our district attorney too about liability, have them read it just to make sure everything's good. And we'll make a formal announcement in March. Is that good?
Would you like comments from the board within the next week or 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think on the rest of this, and even on the track, I would invite any of you guys to call me or send me an email with your ideas. Even if you have ideas about the signage, you think of something tonight when you go home, it's like, Mike, the sign really needs to say this, then just let me know. And I'll be the contact person. Funnel it through me, and then Randy and I can work on it. That way we're not going a couple different ways. All right, and then the final item before I hand it over to Mr. Ciola, just log out for us. Would be a levy update. As far as we all know that the 9 mil levy will be on the ballot in May. CJ did confirm that it is issue 6. All the language is set and we're on the ballot. Part of passing this 9 mil levy, which I know we're going to pass it, we're going to get this for our kids in our community. We do have to make $600,000 in cuts per year for the next 5 years. So at the next board meeting, I will have ready for you most of the identified cuts that would be personnel related or programming related. And because what we're going to need you to do is we're going to need you to approve that so that then I can begin issuing appropriate notification to employees. Questions about that? We're also going to begin looking at the contingency plan if the levy fails. And then we're going to, CJ and I will get together to determine a dollar amount that will have to be cut to open our doors in August to stay in the black. And we will also then, more than likely, we're going to have that, we will have to have a tentative plan in place for April so that we can tentatively notify employees that if the levy doesn't pass, these are the employees and programs that will be affected for August. That would be in April. That way we give our employees that could be affected in March and April, give them a couple months to get their affairs in order if it means employment elsewhere. Any questions about that? Okay. Finally, I'd like to invite Mr. Ciola to come up to the mic and talk about something that's much more fun than levy cuts. Every year, as he's walking up about every 4 years, our band students are given the opportunity to perform out of state at Walt Disney World. And I think Vinny has come up with a plan that I would say, the reason I'm having to present this to you, and it's on the consent agenda, I'm proposing that regardless of the levy in May, the outcome, although it's going to pass, but if for some reason it did not, I think Mr. Ciola has worked to come up with a plan to make this a self-funded activity so that our band can still participate in this opportunity. And the reason we have to make that decision now, we can't wait until May to say, oh, okay, it failed, so we're going to cancel all of our reservations, or oh, okay, we're going to make them out. So maybe I'm taking the piece. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity this evening to get a chance to talk to you about an opportunity I think is really awesome for our high school band students. If you allow me a second to share personal testimony about a trip like this, back when I was a freshman in high school, it was a couple nights before the big Disney trip, and this trip is usually, especially when I was in high school, this trip was really anticipated, especially in my high school. But my family was out 2 nights before the trip, just doing what you would probably do to get ready for a Disney trip. You're at Walmart and tour the trees, and you go to Panera and so forth. And I just told my mom, I was like, Mom, my stomach's not good. I don't know what's going on. And just like my mom would say, she's like, all right, well, you're gonna go to school tomorrow. You're gonna try your best because you're going on this trip. So sure enough, I go to school, and I vividly remember it was second period PE class, and of all the days, it was we played dodgeball, and I got not sucker punched, but a baseball player on the other side of the team like just threw his dodgeball, hit me right in the gut, and sure enough, my stomach got really upset that school day. And I then went to third period German was my friend at the time, my now wife, was in the class with me. She was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not feeling good." So I ended up going to the office, called Mom, I was like, "Mom, I'm not feeling good." She's like, "Are you serious? Like, go to Disney World." You know, it's a big deal in my house. My dad's in charge of the trip and everything. Long story short, she takes me to the doctor's office. They run a series of tests. Come to find out, I had acute appendicitis. And I found out from the doctor that I was not going to be allowed to attend the trip. So I'm like sitting there, I got the surgery and everything. It all rectified itself because in Medina they go every 3 years. So I got to go as a senior. Basically, the reason I share this with you is I know what it takes, like a trip of this magnitude. I understand what it takes to put it on. I've served on this trip both as a student and as a chaperone a few times with the band. And tonight what I'd really like to talk about is a few things of what we already have planned for the trip and some information you might like to know. First of all, if you want to switch to the next slide here, just the purpose aspect of this trip. I mean, Disney in it itself there's a lot of different content down there, and when you're down in Disney World, it's full of music. I mean, you can't think of a movie that Disney creates that doesn't have some type of music aspect to it. And as you can see from the quote, Walt Disney himself obviously agrees. But past just going down to Disney and going down to Orlando, Florida itself, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, here's a few things that would really benefit our students and I think the band organization as a whole. It's a really awesome opportunity to go down to Disney World to Florida and perform as a group. In terms of education, especially of a performance with this magnitude, going down 18-hour bus ride, somewhere completely different with a bunch of different people across the world that are watching you. It's just a different type of performance. You know, you really, really want to try your best. So it's a motivation piece, it's an educational piece. The opportunity in and of itself is really, really important. And I think something that, personally, this program needs is something for students and families and band families to look forward to. And I think this type of opportunity totally presents that. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, what I'd like to share with you a few things regarding the trip, and I've also shared this with all of you individually as well, is the Noteworthy Tourist Company proposal that I've already had created. In this proposal, it's very comprehensive. It's a full itinerary. It covers the trip costs, and you'll see here as we pull up the proposal in a second that The trip cost has variation depending on how many students we have go, and also the different types of hotel accommodations in terms of room sizes that we have. The proposal also presents a payment schedule, and also included in the proposal is some different things you can read there in terms of transportation, hotel accommodations, meals, admission to the parks, and a couple of the comp trips that come with the proposal as well. I'm going to ask Andreas, I don't know if you have a proposal to pull up on the screen.
Is it on here?
Yeah, I sent it to you in your email.
Okay, hold on.
Be nice to reference if we can have that.
Today?
Yes, it's the same one you got for the Google slide presentation. As he's maybe trying to find that, I'm going to go ahead and just speak from the proposal itself. And again, this proposal was shared with each of you individually. Basically, we're proposing for this trip to be next spring break. Yeah, it's the one on the left there. PDF document.
Okay.
If you actually want to scroll down to, I think, about page 3. This is the proposal, actually page 4. Yep, right there. This is the proposal that the Noteworthy Tours Company has provided us, and it's really comprehensive. I mean, as you can see, the dates that we're proposing is March 20th to 25th. That means we would leave on a Friday, and that's the Friday before spring break. I talked to Mr. Hogue about this. Me personally, I just wanted to make sure the students had an opportunity to enjoy their spring break when they come back. Typically, when you take a trip like this, you don't necessarily come back feeling all well rested. It's a pretty big trip. So I just wanted to make sure students came back and had some time to get rejuvenated, especially because April, lots of standardized testing to make sure your students are ready for that. But if you want to just scroll through just a little bit, the itinerary is really comprehensive. It shows you each day what we'd be doing. Obviously, this is subject to change depending on, I have to apply to Disney. They allow applications starting a year out from your trip. So come March 20th, I'll apply for us to go down to Disney. And then once we get accepted, they give us performance dates depending on the dates that we actually go down. You want to actually go down to page 8. You'll notice that this kind of covers all the different tour package inclusions that come with it. Of the ones that I think are important is the, starting at the top there, transportation is included with motor coaches. We'll be taking 2 motor coaches. We have hotel accommodations when we're down there with Spring Hill Suites. It's already booked and ready to go. In terms of meals, students would be fed all the way through the trip, with the exception of on the bus ride down. We need some extra petty cash for that to get some food on the rest stops. But breakfasts are covered at the hotel every single morning. They have Disney dining passes, which is really nice that they supply students because they're only allowed to use it for food. They can't go get some Mickey ears when they're down there. We're making sure that this money is for food. So they would have $88 for about 4 days. And we also are planning to have a group dinner on one of those nights as well. So students would be fed. I also think it's important to note that there's hotel security specifically for our group when we're down in Disney World as well. And then the admission to all 4 parks as well. So if you wouldn't mind going back to the Google slide presentation too. As Mr. Dava already mentioned, this trip, we are planning for this to be completely funded by band students and families, and also the Streetsboro Band Boosters. This is an optional trip for a marching band student. They don't have to go, but with that being said, it needs to be said that if a student wants to go, a marching band student wants to go, we want to do everything we can to help them go. And that's why the Streetsboro Band Boosters are fully prepared. With fundraisers I'm about to show you, we already have planned for marching band students to go. I want to make sure I say that there is no school money being used for this. This will be completely funded by students and families and the Streetsboro Band Boosters. The Streetsboro Band Boosters, if you go to the next slide, these are already some fundraisers we're planning on having, one as early as March. With those fundraisers, there's also one at Panda Express on Route 14. March 21st, we'll get dinner there to help us out. But Jazz Night fundraiser in May, summer car washes, which we already do. I know the Streetsboro baseball team has done a mattress sale in the past. I actually talked with these gentlemen from this company. The Streetsboro baseball team has been doing it recently, so we're planning on trying to put one of those on the calendar in September, and also a cookie dough fundraiser. So we have a lot of different opportunities to raise funds for students to help defray the costs. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. Past fundraisers, we plan in terms of staff to bring 4 staff members. Myself and Mrs. Logan are already planning on going. And we would take some additional band staff members that we have supplementally through auxiliary and percussion. And we definitely plan on bringing a nurse, somebody to help us with medical or some type of medical personnel. In addition to our staff members, we plan to bring 8 to 10 adult chaperones. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. And basically where we are from here, the trip is already set to go, just pending board approval. There is a tentative date already set for a parent meeting to talk logistics of the trip. The tour representative, who know the tours would be there to answer any and all questions. And then at that meeting, we would also talk about trip eligibility. I think it's really important that I say this, and this trip is a privilege. It's not a right for our students. We have expectations for them. We want them to understand this is a really cool opportunity, and that to us together have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make this happen. So, also at that meeting, I would launch the first fundraiser that you just saw with Mallory's fundraiser. So, that's basically all I have to prepare for you. I don't know if you have any questions about anything I just stated.
So what I'd like to do, board, is this is on the consent agenda for your approval. This is how we've done it in the past. So I would like to use this format now for any discussion. And if any of you need this to be pulled off the consent agenda, we can do that. This obviously is time sensitive, but that is a board decision. So now's the time for question and answers.
2 buses?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get all your equipment on?
That's a really great question. So in addition to 2 motor coaches that we would take, typically these motor coaches are suited for putting like suitcases and stuff. We would actually get some type of, some districts use like a Penske truck or something like a U-Haul truck. Yeah, and we have some to drive that as well. So.
Just curious, what's the total cost for the trip?
I can't believe I totally neglected to say that. Actually, can you go back to the proposal? It's totally on there. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
So this diagram right here, I can't believe I totally overlooked this. So what you're seeing here from right to left is the different types of room accommodations that we can offer. Typically, when I went on this trip as a chaperone, students were suited in 4 or quads. So there's 2 beds in that room that can comfortably sleep. The reason why you're seeing Quint up there is because we're contracted to stay at Spring Hill Suites. And these suites actually offer an opportunity to have those 2 beds, but also a pull-out couch that turns into a bed as well. So students, we could fit and save some money by actually putting students in a Quint room, but they would still sleep comfortably as well. So you'll see that we're kind of estimating the cost of this trip to be about $1,100 per student. And again, all the fundraisers we have planned for students as well as helping to defray that cost. And so if you think about in terms of the trip overall, including chaperones, students, and we're looking at about $90,000 to $95,000 for the trip to happen.
So we have to approve this because we're not spending any money on it?
Well, you're approving out-of-state travel is what you're doing.
There was also, I'm sorry to interject, it's my fault. I also filled out the overnight extended form that is, you need to fill out more of those.
And typically with a trip of this magnitude, especially since the board has to approve any out-of-state travel, but because of our levy situation the way it is, normally a trip of this magnitude, you guys would maybe bless it.
And I'm just going to ask the question. I mean, it says no school funding, right?
No school funding.
0.
Right, so that was one of the conditions I charged Mr. Seal figuring out was sometimes, like for example, our Mohican trip or our DC trip, we paid the teachers, the chaperone at a daily rate to go. I said, we will not pay any chaperones a daily rate to go. This is going to, we're going to do this. I can't say to the band, well, we'll pay your daily rate, but we're not going to pay DC or this or that. So we district-wide said no field trips unless it's funded outside. So he came up with a plan to fund that outside.
What about if there's a student that can't afford to make those payments? What are we doing?
And that's a great question. Basically, we have all these fundraisers in place to help any and all students that want to go. And if the student is not in a situation where they're able to go, that's why the trip's optional. It's not a requirement, but we're giving every opportunity that we can through the boosters and for the student themselves to help us raise some funds.
Just make sure I know where the car washes are.
Big V.
Vinny, right? Vinny?
Vinny, yes.
When you did it, Did you guys have this many fundraisers when you were in high school?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty common to have these many fundraisers happen, yeah.
Back in the old days, we would do.
Yeah. Were you able to get the funds so there really was no out-of-pocket expenses for
I wouldn't
or-
suggest that that was the case, but I would say that these fundraisers that we had definitely defrayed the cost to a really large extent. So,
The more successful the fundraisers are, the more the cost will be
Exactly.
per student.
the hope is to defray the costs for students as much as we possibly can.
It's important to understand that the laws have changed on fundraising. And if I go out and sell $500 worth of Miley's chocolate, that profit from that has to spread amongst everyone. It can't go to one person. That's how the laws have changed now. So that's why I'm anticipating why he's doing a lot of fundraisers to try and bring the overall cost down so that that reduces the cost per student.
And he has done his homework. He came and sat with me. We had a nice discussion about this and how it could be ran. He also talked with Randy. I directed him to speak with Randy because Randy deals with the boosters a lot. So he has done a lot of research on this topic before he came to you guys today. It's just so you're aware of that.
Okay. So one more thing, sorry. So let's just say that when the levy does pass, and you do all the fundraisers and you're not at that number that you want to be, so that none of the student band members will have to have out-of-pocket expenses. Can we help them out at all, CJ? Is that something we can do?
So my answer to that would be it's going to depend on the outcome of the levy. It's going to depend on where we end this fiscal year, because remember, that's an approximate amount of cuts based on where we end this year, what happens with the levy. We're hoping that we don't have to make any cuts. We're hoping we can make some different cuts, not personnel cuts. So it would just depend. And once we knew what that was, there's enough time before this trip's not happening until next spring break,
Right.
to where I'd at least be able to sit down and crunch some numbers and talk with Vinny and find out where they were at and where we were financially. Obviously, I support anything that's positive for students. So if there's a way, I'll find a way to help them. Just like I have found a way to do a lot of things in this district when I've been asked to. So I would love to say yes. There's a lot of variables right now, John, but I promise you, if there is a way and the board wants me to do that, I will find a way.
I would say if we can, I think we should discuss it later on maybe, but if you need, a certain amount of money to add to it, and when the levy does pass, if we can't do it, I think we should try to help out and have none of the kids have any out-of-pocket expenses. That's just my opinion.
In the past, the students and the boosters have covered all the costs. I don't know that the board has had any expense on that in the past, but of course, expenses go up too, and things change. Something to look at.
I will also mention too, that this price that you're seeing for $1,100, ticket prices for Disney have gone up consistently over the last four years. The tour company representative, Jack Gray, was really adamant that he make sure he told me that. So I will say that me personally, $1,100, that's a lot of money. Again, we have a lot of different types of students and families in our district. Maybe some are able to help with that type of cost, and some others we need help as well. But I think it's for everything, the experience, $1,100 for 4 days down Disney, all 4 parks, all the food, all the transportation, all the hotel accommodations, hotel security. It's pretty comprehensive for $1,100 for a week that I think would last a lifetime of efforts. So
Yeah, I just don't want a student to have to worry about not being able to go because they can't pay for it. So. Because it sounds that much fun.
Yeah, it's a pretty good time.
Any other questions? So obviously this is not a vote, but I'm asking for some consensus that are we okay to leave that on the consent agenda? Or do you need me to pull that off under superintendent's recommendation? Are you satisfied with the discussion that we've had?
It's good.
Okay.
Thank
Vinny.
you guys for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good work, thanks.
That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the treasurer's report. CJ, you have 1 hour and 20 minutes. Go. No, you don't.
So
We gotta give you equal time, right?
as you can see by the report in front of you, it's our 3-year look at the fiscal history of the general fund. As of December 31st, the general fund had a current fund balance of $3,327,576.83. Typically around this time of year, you'll start seeing it go down until advances come through in taxes. So we'll see a little bit of a lull, and then we'll start to see it build back up. It's not going to be built the way that it once was, but you'll see the ebbs and flows as you've seen through the 3-year history. And that concludes my report.
Well, there's, you said 3 million plus in December was the balance. Some people may think that's a big amount of money, but looking at the past years, it's gone down.
Yeah.
Right.
So the difference between last year at this time and this year this time is $1,126,268.39. That's the difference.
We know there's a lot of variables in there. It's just that, $3 million. People say, wow, you don't need to levy because you got $3 million cash balance, but you got to look at the whole picture.
And that's got to get us through the fiscal year. And also, if you look at the entire history, you see that it's consistently over those 3 years has gone down by $1 million plus. If you look all the way back up to the 3-year, you're probably closer to over $2 million in loss of revenue.
And we will finish the fiscal year with a positive balance, it's your cash balance. But next year, we are, at the current spending, we are predicted to finish the fiscal year in the red, which is why we need the levy. More than $1 million. Yep.
And then as Mike added, one other thing there, the levy was certified on the ballot on 2/12, got confirmation. We believe that the issue is going to be number 6. I'll be receiving some correspondence from the Board of Elections, though, in the next few weeks, coming weeks, with everything and the galley proofs. So we'll have all of the information probably in the next few weeks, according to the Board of Elections.
Anything else?
That's it.
Right. Moving on to board reports, Mrs. Babbitt.
I just want to give an update on PTA and remind everyone that on March 4th, there's going to be a Chipotle after prom fundraiser. So pay attention for more details on that. Also on March 8th, there's the PTA night at the Lake Erie Monsters, and on March 13th is the regular PTA general membership meeting at 6:45 here at DEFR.
Okay, Mr. Gibson.
The levy committee has been meeting every, Monday and Thursday, back and forth. They're moving along greatly. They got a lot of people showing up. A lot of people are really involved. So it's gonna look like we're gonna have a better visibility, getting the word out to everyone. As far as that goes, should make it easier to pass this levy.
Okay, I have no report this evening, so Kelly.
First, I want to applaud Randy and Mike for setting up that coffee talk. I think from everything that I've heard in the community, went really well. So whoever set it up, but whoever ran it and was there, great job. It's great to see that going, and we're going to continue to do it too. So Randy, Mr. T. Ball will be taking the Captain's Council to the Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital on February 28th to visit with the children and pass out stuffed animals. This will be their 4th community outreach project this year for the Captain's Council. They do a lot of things like this, and the kids really look forward to this. So, boys basketball team is currently 8-5 in the league. They have an 8th seed in our district and play Orange at home 26th of this month in the sectional semifinal. Senior night is this Friday. When we beat Cloverleaf, we will secure 2nd place in the league. Wrestling team is 4-9 on the season. The PTC tournament is this weekend on Friday and Saturday. Then we have the postseason that starts after that. The team finished 8th out of 36 teams at a very competitive Bill Deese tournament in Akron, which was the 3rd highest finish of Division II schools. A couple wrestlers have reached their 100 win. That's pretty good. Hank Carey and Caden Rogers, so they've been wrestling a long time. Nice job for them. And then Chris Anderson is just 2 ways away from 100 as well. Girls basketball team is 15-7 on the season. Their wins tied, 15 wins tied to school record for the season. They'll be hosting a tournament game this Friday on February 16th at 1 p.m. On the year, they have broken many individual and team records. As a team, we broke the points record in a game, and we'll probably break the points in the season record. Rachel Bolliard broke the school record for points in a career as well as points in the season. And then Dawn Dial, right? Tied the school record for assists in a game with 10, and Brenda Davis tied the school record for rebounds in a game with 20. So, pretty good season for girls basketball team. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Violi.
I have no report.
All right, moving on then to consent agenda. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items B through N.
I'll move. I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. I just want to call out the donations. There were several people that donated funds to our cafeteria program, along with other some supplies to the district and also books to the library. So thank you to everybody. And I also wanted to mention the retirement of longtime teacher and coach Tom Fessmeyer that will be effective May 31st, 2019. I think a lot of people were hoping that Tom would never retire, but he's done a lot with the track. He's done a lot throughout the district, and now in STEM he's involved with. So thank you, Tom, for all of your years with Streetsboro. Really appreciate it.
How many years?
33. I think it was around 33.
I'll get you that number.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
Mr. Fessmeyer. He also is responsible for our TV productions.
Yes.
He built that program from the ground up.
So we thank him very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, speaking of that, they do correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, they send the video back to the studio and process it, get it back and put it on the board. So that's awesome.
That's all Fessmeyer.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Big shoes, though.
Very much, yes. Call for the vote, please.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Baba,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Superintendent's recommendation?
Sadly, I do not have any recommendations.
Oh.
All right, quickly moving on to treasurer's recommendations.
It is recommended the Board of Education approve the amended appropriations for fiscal year 19, and estimated resources will be adjusted as needed for permanent appropriations.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments?
We just approved some purpose and budget statements above. When that happens, we typically need to amend appropriations based on an influx of grant money coming in and things of that nature that we didn't anticipate.
Call for the vote, please.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Motion carries. Any new business? Hearing none, moving on to old business. Hearing none, moving on to the board president's recommendation. It is recommended the Board of Education enter into executive session to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations or state statutes, and to consider the employment and discipline of a public employee or official with possible action to follow.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Baba?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Motion carries. We are in executive session at 7:28. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Board members, we are going to be going to bring up under hearing and we'll be toward
After a little bit of a light meeting, it lasted a little longer than I thought it would, but in case you guys missed any of that, very quickly.